Elam. Second stage is get me Jack Elam. Third stage is get me a Jack Elam type.
In a rare interview with Variety before his death, Jack Elam left the entire crew stunned when he suddenly revealed a list of the stars he hated most. He recalled the deep scars, one who constantly tried to push his career off a cliff with vicious slander, another who turned his unusual eyes into a public joke on live television, and most painfully, a romance with a legendary actor that ended with the arrival of a third party. Those confessions tore back the glittering curtain, exposing the ruthless shadows Hollywood had always tried to conceal. In the end, who were the names Elam mentioned, and why did he only dare to reveal them when death was near? 1. Henry Fonda rivalry for the heart of a closeted star. By the mid-1950s, Hollywood was ablaze with the name Montgomery Clift. He had just dazzled in A Place in the Sun and From Here to Eternity, with Elizabeth Taylor praising him as a man so fragile yet so alluring that no one could resist him. That very fragility became the spark of a silent but cruel battle for his affection between two very different men, Henry Fonda and Jack Elam. Fonda was an A-list star, Hollywood's face of justice, handsome and stoic. Elam was the opposite, a supporting actor, his crooked eyes branding him a villain always relegated to the lower ranks. Yet both were drawn to Clift, who gave them both love and the thrill of conquest. In 1956, at a lavish party hosted by Elizabeth Taylor at the Beverly Hills Hotel, the rivalry became obvious. Elam arrived with Clift, the two laughing warmly in the grand lobby. But when Henry Fonda walked in, the atmosphere froze. With just a cold glance, he made guests whisper, "Clearly Clift is the prize they both want." Minutes later, Fonda boldly strode over, placed his hand on Clift's shoulder, and led him to another table. Elam was left standing alone, awkward under pitying stares. A Los Angeles Times reporter present described, "It was like a rigged game. Elam never stood a chance." In truth, Elam could hardly compete. Clift already knew Fonda, and Fonda was revered by directors and producers. Elam's unusual looks left him an outsider. The more he tried to hold on to Clift, the smaller he felt against Fonda, who had everything, fame, status, and allure. In the years that followed, the balance tilted completely toward Fonda. After Clift's devastating car accident in 1956, Fonda regularly sent flowers, visited, and even arranged for him to receive the best care. Elam could only stop by a few times, sitting silently for hours like an outsider. A friend of Clift later told Variety Jack came with pleading eyes, but clearly Monty put his trust in Henry. The height of humiliation came in 1969 at Clift's funeral at St. James's Episcopal Church in New York. Henry Fonda arrived with Clift's family proudly seated in the front row, greeted respectfully by Elizabeth Taylor. Elam, despite once being deeply close, stood at the back, isolated like a stranger. That image haunted him to the end, losing the man he loved, defeated by his rival in public, and above all, scorned by Hollywood for not having a perfect face. To Elam, Henry Fonda was not just a cold colleague. He was the man who took away the only person who made him feel less alone in Hollywood. The double humiliation, rejection, and heartbreak turned Fonda's name into one that made Elam's blood boil whenever mentioned. But bitterly, Henry Fonda was not the last on the list of hatred. For after Fonda, Jack Elam still had to face Clark Gable, the king of Hollywood, whose glamorous facade hid direct ties to the mafia, and scandals so shocking they filled Elam with utter contempt. Chapter 2. Clark Gable. The king of Hollywood turned arrogant under mafia protection. The public still remembers Clark Gable as the charming gentleman of Gone with the Wind, calling him by the glittering title, the King of Hollywood. But behind that glow was another face, an arrogant, domineering Gable shielded by the mafia and ready to trample anyone in his way. As early as the 1940s, Gable had close ties with Mickey Cohen, the infamous Los Angeles mob boss. It was Cohen who acted as Gable's shield, rescuing him from countless sex scandals. In April 1941, a Los Angeles Examiner reporter prepared to publish photos of Gable drunk embracing two married women at the Brown Derby. The article was set to explode in Hollywood, but just days later the photos vanished, and the newsroom fell silent. Within the industry, whispers spread the mafia had stepped in to stop the bombshell. With protection, Gable grew bolder. Young actor Robert Walker was among the first victims. While filming Baton in 1943, Walker landed a promising supporting role, but Gable feared it would overshadow him. Rumor had it Gable had the mafia suggest that Walker transport mysterious packages from Las Vegas to Hollywood as a favor. Trembling Walker refused. Weeks later, he was dropped from the film, replaced by someone Gable personally recommended. In 1947, young actress Susan Peters signed with MGM, hoping to rise to stardom. But in a romantic film, Peters' lead role was suddenly cut down after Gable interfered, twisting the script to center on his character. In return, Peters was forced to sign charitable financial papers for a fund bearing Gable's name. Later whispers claimed it was really a money-laundering front run by Mickey Cohen. The film flopped. Peters' career crumbled, but Gable still strutted onto Variety's cover. Anthony Quinn, the Mexican-born actor, also suffered his cruelty. At a Beverly Hills party in 1950, Gable openly mocked Quinn's heritage, silencing the room. Worse, he leveraged mafia ties to stall Quinn's major Paramount contract. The chance slipped away, leaving Quinn bitter while Gable remained on his throne. Gable's private stains were endless. He used his roguish image to mask womanizing and gambling addictions. Confidential hinted he had an illegitimate child with Loretta Young. A scandal Cohen allegedly paid to cover up. He was also rumored to be linked to underground betting in Las Vegas, using young actors as couriers to carry money. Anyone who dared to reveal the truth was quickly cast out of Hollywood. Jack Elam saw it all. Colleagues coerced parties where Gable strutted proudly as though he owned Hollywood. To Elam, Gable was no king but a puppet of the mafia, glittering on the outside, rotten within. Elam despised him to the bone, seeing Gable as living proof of Hollywood's injustice. Those with protection became legends, while true talent was crushed into dust. But Elam's enemy list did not end there. After Gable came Burt Lancaster, the star famed not only for his fierce masculinity, but also for his temper and giant ego, a man unafraid to call on the underworld to clear his way to success. Chapter 3. Burt Lancaster, Arrogance and the Hand of the Underworld. Burt Lancaster was often hailed as Hollywood's Iron Star, the handsome face with a razor-sharp smile that captivated audiences in The Killers and From Here to Eternity. But beneath the shine, he was hot-tempered, ambitious, and unafraid to use the mob's hand to wipe away rivals. From his early rise in the late 1940s, Lancaster relied on ties with New Jersey mafia figures where he had grown up. The most notorious was Frank Costello, the East Coast gambling kingpin. Costello backed Lancaster's long-term Paramount contract while many of his peers were left behind. Jack Elam bitterly told friends, without Costello, Burt would just be a circus stuntman. Elam personally felt Lancaster's cruelty in 1952. At the time, Elam had a draft contract for a villain role in Warner Brothers, The Crimson Pirate. It should have been his breakthrough, but just days before shooting, his name disappeared from the cast list. He was replaced by a little-known actor close to Lancaster. According to crew whispers, Lancaster himself phoned Warner executives demanding Elam's removal, sneering, "That crooked-eyed guy will ruin the frame's perfection." Elam could only watch his chance stolen while Lancaster dominated the screen. Lancaster's arrogance went further. At Universal in 1954, while filming Apache, he lost his temper when director Robert Aldrich requested a retake. In front of the entire crew, he hurled the script into Aldrich's face, then barked at supporting actors. "You're just background walls for me." Elam, present that day later, said he had never felt so humiliated. Behind the tantrums, Lancaster also used dirty tricks. Young actor Farley Granger, famed after Hitchcock's Rope, 1948, was targeted. As Granger prepared to sign a big MGM deal in 1950, Confidential suddenly released a sex scandal that destroyed it. Insiders whispered it was orchestrated by Lancaster's backers because soon after he landed the very role Granger had been eyed for. Elam, too, became a victim. In 1955, the Los Angeles Mirror ran a small piece about a crooked-eyed supporting actor drunk and fighting on Sunset Strip. Though unnamed, the description fit Elam. The rumor cost him a TV contract. Insiders whispered it was Lancaster's smear using mafia evidence to ruin Elam. Lancaster even struck at Elam's personal pride. At a Beverly Hills hotel party in 1956, he sneered publicly, "Hollywood is for perfect faces, not for freaks." Laughter erupted, leaving Elam silent in humiliation. He carried that wound for life, seeing Lancaster as the man who killed his last shred of dignity. Off-screen Lancaster was no cleaner. In 1958, the Los Angeles Times questioned inflated budgets on Sweet Smell of Success, with excess funds funneled into a mafia-controlled shell company. The scandal was buried quickly, but industry whispers lingered. Lancaster had turned film into a laundering machine. To Elam, Burt Lancaster was a terrifying blend of power, arrogance, and dark scheming. A man who would crush colleagues, steal opportunities, and still pose as a respected star in public. Every time Elam saw Lancaster on Variety's cover or praised on NBC Rage rose anew. But if Burt Lancaster made Jack Elam furious with arrogance and underworld ties, then the name Gary Cooper brought back a deeper wound, the pain of betrayed love, the spark that began Elam's lifelong chain of hatred. Chapter 4. Gary Cooper, The Secret Lover and the Bitter Betrayal. Hollywood in the 1940s was not only glittering lights, but also hidden relationships veiled by curtains. Few knew that behind the glow of Gary Cooper, the silver screen symbol of masculinity admired by millions, was a secret tortured affair with Jack Elam, then just a supporting actor typecast as villains. According to whispers, Cooper came to Elam first out of sheer passion. A servant at the Beverly Hills Hotel once told Confidential magazine that Cooper had an unusually high need for affection, and Elam knew how to fulfill it. They bonded for years in long, secret nights with only jazz from an old phonograph and the clink of bourbon glasses. But their differences soon made the relationship a weary tug-of-war. Cooper often craved to spice things up by adding a third partner. He even half-joked, "Jack, just try it once, we'll have so much more fun." Elam flatly refused conservative private, unwilling to cross that line. Even going public, Cooper longed for it, tired of Paramount's facade. But Elam feared his budding career would be buried if the truth came out. Those differences slowly burned away their love. Unfulfilled Cooper sought other outlets. In early 1948, the press exploded when he was repeatedly spotted with Randolph Scott in Palm Springs. The two golfed at El Mirador and attended all-night parties. Scott was already rumored to have lived with Cary Grant, so when Photoplay ran photos of him and Cooper together, Hollywood erupted. Whispers spread Cooper found in Scott what Jack Elam never dared give: boldness and risk. Hearing the news, Elam sat silent in his small Hollywood Boulevard apartment as though his world had collapsed. The nightmare deepened in summer 1952. At a Mocambo club party, a tipsy Cooper admitted to a familiar reporter that he once had a special supporting actor partner for many years. Weeks later, Luella Parsons's column in the Los Angeles Examiner hinted at a crooked-eyed supporting actor hiding a shocking secret. Though no name was printed, everyone knew it meant Jack Elam. The consequences were immediate and devastating. NBC contracts Elam was close to finalizing vanished. Directors like Bud Boetticher and Henry Hathaway avoided him, fearing backlash. Friends stepped away, afraid of being tainted. In Hollywood, reputation was often more important than talent, and Elam lost everything over one vague article. From then on, the passion that once fed him became a smoldering fire of hate. To Elam, Gary Cooper was not only a traitor in love, but the man who indirectly shattered his career and honor. Every time he saw Cooper smiling on Life magazine's cover, Elam remembered the fall of 1952, a scar carved deep in his heart, never to heal. The bitter truth was that Jack Elam's tragedies did not end there. For after Gary Cooper came another Western legend who humiliated him in public, starting from what seemed like a harmless golf match, but left a wound he would never forget. 5. John Wayne public humiliation and the golf course showdown. Among the names Jack Elam hated until the very end of his life, John Wayne was certainly at the top. The whole world called Wayne the Duke, seeing him as the ultimate symbol of masculinity, the unbeatable Western hero. But to Elam, Wayne was nothing more than the embodiment of fake supremacy, a man who forced others to live by the perfect man mold he himself had built. From their very first collaboration at Warner Brothers Studios in Burbank in the late 1950s, the distance between them was clear. Wayne strode onto the set with his bold gait, booming laughter filling the room, and instantly the crew's attention gravitated toward him. Elam, by contrast, was just a supporting face with his crooked eyes, usually cast as losing villains. During one scene, Wayne sneered half-jokingly, "Hard for the audience to focus on the hero when there's a crooked face wandering nearby." The line cut like a knife, sending the crew into laughter while Elam sat frozen, humiliation coursing through him. A lighting technician later told Hollywood Reporter that Elam quietly left the set early that day without saying goodbye to anyone. But the contempt didn't stop on set. In 1961, a charity golf tournament in Palm Springs gathered A-list stars: Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Bing Crosby, along with dozens of reporters from the Los Angeles Times and CBS News. Elam, who only played golf for leisure, agreed to join for fun, knowing he had no chance of winning. As expected, John Wayne won easily. But what crushed Elam wasn't the loss, it was the public ridicule before hundreds of spectators. Wayne repeatedly mocked him, comparing his missed swings to a one-eyed cowboy lost, unable to find his way back to town. Laughter erupted across the course. TV cameras zoomed in, catching Elam's face, flushed red hands trembling around the golf club. That was the day he swore never to forget the humiliation. After that, the lavish parties at the Beverly Hills Hotel made Elam feel even more outcast. While Wayne sat surrounded by major directors like Howard Hawks' producer Darryl F. Zanuck and famous actresses, Elam lingered in the corners. Wayne poured whiskey, boomed about war, politics, and power, then arrogantly declared, "Hollywood is for the strong. The weak will soon disappear." For Elam, who had to fight twice as hard to overcome his physical defect, it was blatant insult. His resentment deepened when Wayne spoke publicly on television. In a 1960 ABC interview, he proclaimed that America needed to purge the weaklings, insisting that society was only for the strong. Those words struck Elam like a slap, making him feel rejected even after all his efforts to survive in the industry. The final blow came with Wayne's infamous 1971 Playboy interview, where he openly expressed extreme views on race and praised the supremacy of white American men. Reading those words, Elam realized the contempt Wayne held wasn't just for his crooked eyes or humble background. It came from a deeply rooted ideology. For Wayne, anyone who didn't fit the ideal American male mold he worshipped deserved to be trampled. To the public, John Wayne remained forever the Western hero, the Duke. But in Jack Elam's memory, he was just an empty statue, a tyrant cloaked in righteousness to disguise arrogance and cruelty. The Palm Springs humiliation, the cutting remarks on set, and the extreme declarations etched scars into Elam's soul. Every memory stoked the fire of hatred anew. But worse still, Wayne was not the only one who made Elam see Hollywood as a world of lies. Another man hailed as Mr. Nice Guy America nearly destroyed Elam's career during the brutal communist hunts. That man was James Stewart. Chapter 6. James Stewart, the stain of the communist hunts. To understand the hatred Jack Elam carried all his life, we must go back to the 1950s when America was gripped by Red Scare paranoia. In those years, even the faintest suspicion of being pro-communist could end a career instantly. The House Un-American Activities Committee HUAC relentlessly dragged Hollywood artists into hearings. From Congress halls to bars along Hollywood Boulevard, suspicion was thick in the air. People said even a sideways glance could be twisted into an excuse for accusation. In this climate, James Stewart became a poster boy for conservatives. A decorated WW-2 pilot who had flown B-24 Liberators for the U.S. Air Force, Stewart's uniformed image graced life and time with captions hailing him as the soldier returned to defend American values. The government and studios like MGM paraded him at events and speeches about the red threat, making him the golden face of propaganda. Elam, on the other hand, was just a supporting actor with crooked eyes struggling for a foothold. Rumors swirled that Stewart used his influence to undermine him. In 1953, at a private meeting at the Beverly Hills Country Club, Stewart was allegedly the anonymous source who tipped HUAC that Elam had ties to leftist screenwriters who gathered at Musso and Frank Grill. Weeks later, Elam received a subpoena. The Hollywood Reporter ran a cryptic note about a crooked-eyed supporting actor under HUAC's scrutiny. Elam endured grueling interrogations in Washington, D.C., under blinding lights and the stern gaze of dozens of congressmen. They grilled him on who he met, what he read, whether he had attended gatherings at Dalton Trumbo's house. Though HUAC found no evidence Elam was branded dangerous, TV contracts collapsed. NBC had planned to cast him in a new Western series, but after the scandal, his name vanished from the list. While Elam lived in fear of being cast out, Stewart rose higher. On CBS in 1954, he was introduced as Soldier Star Model Citizen of America. The contrast cut into Elam like salt on a wound. He never forgot a day in 1955 on the Universal lot when Stewart coldly refused to rehearse with supporting actors, dismissing them with a wave, "I don't need to waste time on unimportant people." That line nailed down Elam's humiliation, transforming bitterness into hatred. Stewart's hypocrisy showed in other ways. In 1957, he established the Stewart Foundation for Veterans, supposedly raising funds for ex-soldiers. But the Los Angeles Examiner questioned a missing sum of donations. Whispers spread that Stewart funneled the money into his own film project. Thanks to his political ties, the scandal was buried forever. Behind the scenes, insiders nicknamed it the Cover-Up Fund. For Elam, these experiences cemented his view of Stewart as the embodiment of deceit. On the surface, he was a national hero, Mr. Nice Guy America. In the shadows, he was a man willing to sacrifice colleagues to polish his image, even exploiting public trust for personal gain. Each time Elam saw Stewart stride down the red carpet, he remembered the HUAC hearings, his sweat-soaked shirt, the humiliation of being treated like a traitor just because of the eyes he was born with. If James Stewart made Jack Elam seethe over hypocrisy cloaked in all-American glory, then Kirk Douglas brought him another kind of humiliation, naked ambition, and the shameless theft of the spotlight right on set. Chapter 7. Kirk Douglas ambition from battlefield to film set. Kirk Douglas was often celebrated as a true warrior of Hollywood. On screen, he was the indomitable hero of Spartacus. Off-screen, the press praised him as the ideal masculine icon. But to Jack Elam, Douglas was no hero at all, only an ambitious man eager to flaunt his military record and quick to steal the light from colleagues. During Rivalry, Douglas served in the U.S. Navy as an officer. Elam enlisted at a lower rank working in logistics hauling supplies. After the war, Douglas often appeared in Life and Time boasting of his glorious days. But whenever he saw Elam at veteran gatherings, Douglas mocked him. At one reunion in Los Angeles in 1947, Douglas sneered loudly, "Some give orders, some just haul rice sacks. You're the latter, Jack." The room burst into laughter. Elam stormed out in humiliation. On set, Douglas's ambition was even clearer. In 1955 at Universal, Elam was given a rare chance to deliver lines directly opposite Douglas in a Western. It was his opportunity to prove himself alongside a star. But during filming, Douglas ad-libbed new lines overshadowing Elam. Later, he urged the director to keep this improvised version. The scene Elam had hoped for became Douglas's one-man show. The breaking point came in 1960 with Spartacus, which Douglas produced and headlined. Elam had only a minor role but gave it his all. Then, in a Universal meeting, Douglas coldly told Stanley Kubrick, "Audiences pay to see me, not some crooked-eyed extra." Soon after, Elam's scenes were cut from the theatrical release. The film became a legend, but for Elam, it was a scar proof that Douglas crushed his chance right in front of him. Douglas was also infamous for hogging the center of attention. In 1962, at Warner Brothers during a group scene, he insisted the camera be adjusted so he stood dead center. Supporting actors, including Elam, were pushed to the edges of the frame. Elam realized bitterly that in Hollywood, the powerful always seized the spotlight while others were left in the shadows. Off-screen, Douglas's ideal man image was equally false. Photoplay called him Hollywood's most desired man. But insiders knew Douglas staged romances to fool the public. In 1958, he even paid a young actress to walk the red carpet with him at Grauman's Chinese Theater, creating a playboy facade while concealing complicated affairs behind the scenes. To Elam, it was blatant fraud. He once told a close friend, "Douglas lives by swallowing other people's light, then paints himself a perfect picture. To me, he's the most despicable of all." Over the years, every time Elam saw Douglas on Variety's cover or featured on The Ed Sullivan Show, he remembered the stolen lines, the sidelined moments, the humiliation, all because he lacked the power to fight back. But Elam's tale of resentment didn't end with Douglas, for he also had to endure another colleague so loud he ruined entire takes just to steal the spotlight with a scandalous personal life that even Elam found unbearable. That man was Ernest Borgnine. Chapter 8. Ernest Borgnine. Troublesome co-star and chaotic private life. In the public eye, Ernest Borgnine was once praised as Hollywood's everyman, the man who won an Oscar for Marty in 1955. But to Jack Elam, he was a nightmare on set, a loud, disruptive man whose chaotic private life turned everything into farce. The irritation began in 1992, when both appeared on ABC's sitcom Home Improvement. Elam, meticulous and respectful of the script, carefully prepared for his role as Hick Peterson. Yet every time the cameras rolled, Borgnine ad-libbed, laughed loudly, or pulled antics in front of the lens. In one March taping, while Elam was delivering a serious line, Borgnine suddenly slapped him hard on the back, ruining the rhythm. The live audience roared with laughter, and the director kept the take for entertainment value. Elam fumed, realizing his work had been turned into a joke. Borgnine also constantly hogged the spotlight. Backstage, he often raised his voice to drown out his colleagues, making sure the audience focused only on him. Elam grew so frustrated he once told a production assistant, "This isn't acting anymore, this is a circus." But what Elam despised most was Borgnine's personal life. With 5 marriages, the most infamous was to singer Ethel Merman in 1964. The union lasted only 32 days before collapsing in chaos. The Los Angeles Times called it one of Hollywood's shortest and most ridiculous divorces ever. Friends recalled Elam reading the article, shaking his head and saying, "If someone like that is still celebrated as a legend, then Hollywood truly has no standards." Borgnine's whirlwind marriages and scandals often dominated headlines, overshadowing other projects. In 1973, while Elam played a supporting role in a TV movie, its entire promotion was buried beneath tabloid coverage of Borgnine's divorce from Donna Rancourt. To Elam, it felt like his voice had been stolen by a man who thrived on turning life into a sideshow. The irony was that despite his antics and chaos, Borgnine was still celebrated. In 1996, when he received the Screen Actors Guild Lifetime Achievement Award, NBC broadcast the ceremony live, praising him as America's beloved friend. Elam sat at home, bitterly recalling how Borgnine had trampled him on set while Hollywood applauded the noise and absurdity. To Jack, Elam Borgnine was living proof that Hollywood didn't just glorify legends, it also exalted foolishness. That is why Borgnine remained on his list of most hated colleagues. Jack Elam's story revealed a dark side few expected behind Hollywood's glitter. And what do you think of the mysterious names he mentioned? Leave your thoughts in the comments below to join the discussion. Don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and ring the bell so you won't miss future videos. If you found this one intriguing, share it with friends to explore the hidden side of cinema together. See you in the next video.